Hello and welcome to this presentation. I am Martin, the founder of Atna.life. I have a classical training in hospitality management and been in the hotel industry for almost 15 years and founded my own consultancy 4 years ago. I help clients to adopt a new mindset for the digital age, work on innovative placemaking concepts and advise purpose-driven projects and retreat centers. I would start with drawing your attention to the realization that we live in a unique moment in human history. Never before have we had so much knowledge at our disposal that should help us to make the best possible decisions. At the same time, we are still creating massive damage to our habitat. So humanity has experienced a quantum leap in its evolution over the last 40 years. We have exponential technological growth. Our population has increased by 3 billions. 50% of all living species got exterminated, and we doubled global carbon emissions. So we have this infinite potential of technological progress, but we also have infinite challenges. Here I'd like to introduce the famous Einstein quote where he said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them." I believe this fact can't be repeated often enough to be really understood. It is the guiding thought that inspires this presentation. So if we are to solve the big problems, we have to reflect upon and change the way of our thinking. This means we have to unlearn old patterns and learn new approaches. It is our responsibility to educate ourselves and as a consequence to change. And we have to do this now. In this presentation, I'll give you an overview of some concepts, approaches, and ideas that can inspire such a mindset which I believe is at the root of the solution. We have to realize that quantitative growth is coming to an end and thus need to emphasize the notion of qualitative growth. With that comes a discussion on purpose, and then you inevitably end up engaging with some of the bigger questions in life. It is obvious that the digital age will need us to acquire new skills, new approaches, or simply entirely new mindsets in order to deal with the current and increasingly VUCA world. VUCA is standing for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, a term coined by the US military in the 90s. Having mentioned VUCA, we will get to our first slide, which highlights how complexity has evolved. This tool, the Kinevin framework, helps to navigate complexity. It offers decision makers a sense of place from which to view their perceptions. This helps us to make sense of our own and others' behavior and consequently make the right decisions. The framework draws on research from systems theory and systems thinking. So looking at the right side, in a simplified way, we could say it represents daily operations business. At the bottom, we have best practices like SOPs, processes. In the upper corner, we have the good practices for more complex guest interactions like complaint management or the non-operational departments. And the left side is the new outside world dominated by complexity and chaos. Here you need emergent and completely novel practices to survive. To respond to that new world, one needs entirely new ways of management and leadership. In the past, even the outside world was on the right side. Now you have an entirely different scenario. A helpful approach to a new management and leadership mentality is the just mentioned systems thinking. Systems thinking is a new way of thinking, obviously, about the work you do, your place, and the interactions within a whole. Systems theory is about developing broadly applicable concepts and principles, as opposed to a specific domain of knowledge. So a system is a conglomeration of interrelated and interdependent parts, influenced by its environment, defined by its structure and purpose, and expressed through its functioning. Also, a system is more than the sum of its parts, as it expresses synergy and emergent behavior. So in order to be able to make the mindset shifts we spoke about in the introduction, we have to become aware of how a system actually works and what is below the obvious surface of our daily events. Basically, it is to see and understand the bigger picture. here represented as a pyramid. Our own and the collective patterns of behavior, underlying systemic thinking structures, and mental models are what actually shape reality. Especially our mental models are at the very bottom or at the foundation of how we operate. So starting from the bottom of the pyramid, the transformation of our mental models helps us to design better systemic structures. This will help us to anticipate trends and thus create better outcomes, resulting in better choices at the very top. Now that we are aware of a systemic view of things, we can dive a bit deeper in the understanding of how organizations or our work actually function, or how they could function differently. For this, I would like to introduce you the concept of teal organizations. This is an expression coined by a former McKinsey manager, Frédéric Laloux, in his now famous book, Reinventing Organizations. Basically, he analyzed different types of organizations, their predominant characteristics, and suggests that organizations that want to thrive in a digital age should adopt teal principles. For this, he uses a color coding system where you can see a simplified version of here. We quickly see that according to his criteria, hotel operations organizations are traditionally probably rather in the amber and orange sphere. Therefore, it can be especially hard for them to implement some of the new teal ways. A basic summary of the three main pillars of the teal philosophy, which you see in the top bar, is self-management, to move away from hierarchy and bureaucracy to fluid systems of distributed authority and collective intelligence. Wholeness. Traditionally, one shows up at work as professional self, basically wearing a mask, whereas being whole, we can be authentic and who we really are, because there is a cultivated environment of trust. The evolutionary purpose. Instead of predicting and controlling the future, the organization and its members have a living sense of direction and try to understand what the organization is drawn to become. A more detailed comparison on what the shift from orange to teal means in terms of internal organization and governance can be seen here. Basically, the move away from machine to organism means that your organization becomes more agile. As you abolish classical hierarchy, leadership gains in importance and your team and employees are empowered around increased accountability. You can also pause the video here and have a closer look at the differences of both systems. And I'll have a sip of water at the same time. I would nevertheless like to mention that not all of these concepts can apply entirely to all areas of a hotel operation. Especially for hospitality industry, I see the idea of a more organic organization structure rather as an inspiration for the corporate office that is worth being prototyped when you have the luxury of time and money in your training department. But be assured, a lot of big and wealthy companies with huge innovation and change management teams are currently trying to get their heads around these topics. These are rather new concepts and require a deep shift in our mindsets and thus of our mental models. So don't expect them to happen overnight, neither in your or in any other industry. Now we're coming to the topic of social innovation, which I believe will be a key driver for the future of tourism. So social innovations are new social practices that aim to meet social needs and strengthen civil society. This applies to working conditions, education, community, development, or health, which are topics that are relevant to almost any industry. Social innovation includes the social processes of innovation, such as open source methods and also innovations which have a purely social purpose. Social innovation touch upon every part of our lives and have great disruptive potential. They not only introduce new approaches to seemingly intractable problems, they are new and creative approaches to deal with societal challenges. Examples that influence the hospitality industry are obviously the co-living movement, other crowd-generated services like food delivery, mobility, and other new business models that are attributed to the sharing or platform economy. You now might wonder how social innovation can benefit your business success and how it can benefit the bottom line. Unfortunately, there is no easy answer, as that brings us back to the notion of a complex or even chaotic world. And in these worlds, there are no easy solutions, like we know them from the past. So this is an invitation to rethink and reinvent your way of doing business, or maybe even the business altogether. But what is for sure is that the future will be about experiences, social impact, and community engagement, which are characteristics of social innovations. It can only be said that the better you manage to integrate social innovations and the mindset that goes with it, the higher your chances will be not only to survive, but to thrive in the coming years. As we're here at the Eco Hotel Summit, I also would like to touch upon the topic of sustainability. If we look at this triple bottom line model here, sustainability is created at the intersection of people, planet, and profit. So it is a balance between several key elements and does not only focus on ecology within the property with its typical measures of energy reduction, eliminating plastic and recycling, etc. To take it a step further, I would like to introduce the term of regeneration. The term sustainability basically means not to create more damage, in fact to neutralize the impact of our actions. But considering that we have damaged the global ecosystem to an extent where simply not doing any more additional damage isn't good enough anymore, we have to make up for the damages. Thus we have to start focusing on restorative and regenerative practices. As we know, it is already challenging to be sustainable. So how to be even restorative or regenerative? Also here, no easy answers, I'm afraid, but it helps if we apply a systemic thinking mindset, opposed to one that only focuses on purely technical solutions. Regeneration basically comes out of transformation, rather than on incremental improvement of existing, more technical practices. So to regenerate, we have to transform the system. And last but not least, I would like to introduce the whole systems approach for living ecosystems, which is supporting regeneration at large. Here we have a model used by the Global Eco-Village Network. It is their foundation to define basic principles of what makes an ecosystem design truly holistic. It puts the whole systems approach at the center of all other domains like economy, ecology, culture, like worldviews, values, and social or society in general. The whole systems approach to design and regeneration is driven by a strong focus on collaboration and participation. This means that it actively includes everyone concerned and encourages transparency at every level. So this emphasizes the importance that we can't do these things alone. Changing a system can only be done together. So we have to engage all stakeholders, build networks for mutual support, and find strengths, weaknesses, and leverage points in all of these four domains. With that call for solidarity and co-creation, I would like to come to the end of my presentation. So what to make out of all these concepts and ideas that I introduced to you, you might ask yourself. Well, I simply suggest you take them as inspiration and food for thought, and maybe start to experiment with some of these ideas by introducing them into your work. There's a lot of material out there on these topics, and an increasing number of consultants and advisors can help you with that. So wish you the best of luck, and thank you very much.